I hope you're well. Of course, I'd like to thank you so very much for joining me today. In Philippians chapter 4 and verse 4, Paul writes, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice." Now, for a little bit of context, Paul was sitting in a prison cell, and he writes, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice." Now, there's multiple different lights we can look at this in, but today I'd like to look at it and say a Christian can have joy because of Christ. In Luke chapter 2 in verse 10 we read, "Then the angel said to them, 'Do not be afraid, for behold, I will bring you good tidings of great joy, which will be to all people.'" Of course, he's talking about Christ. We see in verse 12, "And this will be the sign to you. You will find a babe wrapped in swaddling clothes lying in a manger." Of course, we see that is Christ later. Verse 13, "And suddenly there was with the angel a great multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, 'Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace and goodwill toward men.'" This good news is for all people. It's not for one group. It's not for two groups. It's not for three, four. It's for all people. It's available to all people, and it's good news for all those who would listen to it. The angel says, "Good tidings of great joy." So bring those to you. Of course, speaking of Christ. So it makes sense when you look at it in that light that Paul is saying, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice." Why? Because Christ, the very Son of God, was born. Christ, the very Son of God, walked on earth. And Christ, the very Son of God, lived, of course, on earth, died, was buried, was resurrected, and now is on the right hand of the throne of God. It makes sense for Paul to say, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice." As Christians, we have good reason to rejoice. That reason, chiefly, number one, is Christ and the promises that He has made, and of course the example that He has set.